Good morning and welcome to Daily Red Devil for all of your latest Manchester United transfer news and talk. Happy Friday, everybody. The weekend is here. Tomorrow is the big one, Manchester United versus Newcastle United. But today we have lots and lots of stuff to get into. But before we do that, please do smash a like on the video. Please do subscribe to the channel if this is your first time watching. And let's get straight on into it. So on the show today, we're going to be talking a little bit about Sir Jim Ratcliffe's plan for the recruitment at Manchester United and how it's going to change with his new team coming in. We'll also be talking a little bit about Ivan Toney, with Manchester United apparently interested in signing him. And we'll also be talking about Andre Onana, who might decide to not go to Africa Cup of Nations in order to retain his place as the Manchester United #1. Lots of other bits to get into as well. As always, get involved in the comment section. Make sure you have your say on everything Manchester United. I always like to see what you guys have to say. So make sure you get in the comment section and let me know your thoughts. Let's start off the story with the story about Andre Onana. So obviously we spoke on the show last night about how Altay Bayindir is ultimately ready to take the #1 position at Manchester United. He feels that he can cement his place as Manchester United's #1 goalkeeper. Obviously, Onana is expected to go to the Africa Cup of Nations in the month of January. I think it's 7 games that Andre Onana would miss. And Altay Bayindir ultimately believes that he's good enough that he can retain his place past that. So once Onana comes back, Altay Bayindir will be so comfortable that it'll be impossible to give Onana the shirt back. So there is a bit of a concern, really. There is, especially for Andre Onana. I would say this, right? I think that we should give him an opportunity. I do. I think you've just signed this other goalkeeper who's very highly regarded. He's the national team goalkeeper for Turkey. They just beat Germany, didn't they, in the international break? You know, he comes with high regards from a lot of people. Give him a try. Onana has made, 2-3 mistakes against Galatasaray. He made a massive mistake against Bayern Munich. He's made quite a few mistakes in big games so far. So I think you do have to use the rest of your squad. If that was Harry Maguire, people would be calling for him to be benched, wouldn't they? So you've got to be fair. You can't dish out opinions on one player and then when somebody does something worse, you say, "Oh no, keep him in goal. It's fine." So yeah. And then the story also goes on to say that Andre Onana could now pull out of the Africa Cup of Nations to protect his #1 spot at Manchester United. So obviously he's concerned. Obviously we all know that he hasn't had the best of starts to Manchester United in his career, has he, to be honest? But the last 2 or 3 games, apart from the Galatasaray game, I thought he was all right. I thought he was starting to show some signs of promise, but it kind of just went backwards again in probably our most important game of the season so far, or in recent months anyway. You know, we had to win against Galatasaray really to be 100% confident that we'd go through. We didn't win. And now we find ourselves in a situation where we have to beat Bayern Munich and Galatasaray have to draw with Copenhagen. If any results don't go that way, you know, if Copenhagen beat Galatasaray, they go through. If Galatasaray beat Copenhagen, they go through. So like, we have to pray that they draw, which could happen, but then we also have to go and beat Bayern Munich. And I guess you could argue, you know, Pellistri probably should have squared it in the last couple of minutes and we should have won the game. We had plenty of opportunities in our attack to win that game and we didn't. So you can't put all of the blame on Andre Onana, but I just think that across that whole 90-minute game, I don't remember once them having an opportunity to score. The only time they scored was their 2 free kicks, which were very dodgy, and that goal where he definitely should have saved it. You know, the guy had a shot from miles out, and it was on his post, and he couldn't get to it. So yeah, but let me know what you guys think. Do you think Altay Bayindir will cement himself as the new goalkeeper, or do you think that Onana will stay? Al says, Onana is the most error-prone goalkeeper I have ever seen. He is an accident waiting to happen. Fair enough. Comeback King says, drop Onana. He will get Erik ten Hag the sack. I mean, Erik ten Hag must be thinking these types of things because he's the one in the firing line at the end of the day, right? Andre Onana's just signed a 5-year contract with Manchester United. If it doesn't work with Erik ten Hag, he'll just get sacked. It's as simple as that. Whereas he can't sack a goalkeeper. Like, the goalkeeper will stay here, whether he plays or not. The goalkeeper will keep being paid. The goalkeeper will still be on the books. Whereas Manchester United can't just say, "Oh, it hasn't worked with, it hasn't worked with Andre Onana. Let's get somebody else." Like, it doesn't work like that in football. Like, you have to give people a chance. So yeah, I do agree with you in some ways. If he doesn't change things up, then Yeah, then we might be in a bit of trouble, wouldn't we? Right, let's move on to the next story, though. Let's talk a little bit about this story about Jim Ratcliffe, because we spoke a little bit about this on the show yesterday, but I wanted to go into more detail on it. So the headline that's being run with last night and this morning is that apparently Jim Ratcliffe is going to ultimately change the transfer policy at Manchester United. So obviously over the years, our policy has been sign big shirt sellers, international players, I would say, the Falcaos, the Cavani's, the Di Marias, Lukaku's, these big shirt sellers, most of which, apart from Lukaku, had never played in the Premier League. Di Maria had never played. Cavani hadn't. Falcao hadn't. Actually, he played at Chelsea for a little bit, but you know what I mean. Most of the players that we've signed have been international players who've not really ever played in the domestic Premier League. So they were coming in, and it might take them 1 or 2 seasons to adjust, like we're seeing with Anthony. I think that Anthony might actually turn into a good player, but it will probably take him 2 or 3 years to adjust to the Premier League. You saw that with Sancho. He went off to Dortmund, and he was people describing him as world class. He comes back to the Premier League, and he's simply not good enough. So there's a massive level difference between other leagues around Europe and the Premier League. We saw that against Galatasaray. No team would play like how Galatasaray did in the Premier League. Not a single one. It was literally end-to-end football for 90 minutes. They had 6 players attacking, no midfield, and a defence. Every time we had the ball, it would take 1 pass and we were through on their goal. Like, that doesn't happen in the Premier League. So it looks like Jim Ratcliffe's going to change our policy and focus on homegrown talent. So that will be people through the youth academy, which I like. I'm excited about that. But also focusing on more domestic players. So when he says domestic players, that means people who are already Premier League proven, or people, who have come from the English leagues, so maybe the Championship, League One, Premier League, which in theory makes sense. I get that because, they're more used to playing in this country versus, if you sign Di Maria, who's played most of his career at Real Madrid, and he comes to the Premier League and he doesn't really want to be here, then it usually won't work, will it? The same with Falcao and Cavani. Even you could even say Casemiro. I think Casemiro's been a good signing, but still, spending £70 million on somebody at the age of 30 who's never played a minute of football in the Premier League, it is questionable. And I'm not sure what I think about this at the moment. I'm still a little bit undecided. Now, a good reference point of another club who've tried to kind of do a similar model is Newcastle United. So if you look at Newcastle United signings recently, they signed Lewis Hall from Chelsea. They signed Livramento. I believe he was from... Let me just have a quick look for you. So they signed Lewis Hall from Chelsea. They signed Livramento from Southampton. Harvey Barnes from Leicester. Anthony Gordon from Everton. The only international player they signed last season was Sandro Toney. Every other one of their players was domestic players. And you know what? I think it has worked for Newcastle. I think, Lewis Hall, Livramento, Harvey Barnes, Anthony Gordon... Most people, if they were coming to Manchester United, would say, "Oh, I don't want them. They're not good enough." But to be honest, they've gone to Newcastle and they've done a very, very good job. So I think that Jim Ratcliffe is maybe looking at more of that Newcastle type model, where instead of going out and buying 3 or 4 shirt sellers every window who might not work, you go and buy maybe 3 or 4 players from the domestic league. So I don't know, an Anthony Gordon, a Harvey Barnes, a Lewis Hall, for example. And then you go and get maybe 1 international player. So like in Newcastle's case, they went and got Sandro Toney. And you know what? That has worked for Newcastle. It has. And I think that those players have gelled a lot quicker because they're used to playing in the Premier League. They know what to expect. They don't need any time to settle in because they've played in the Premier League for most of their career, all of those players, or in the Championship. So in some ways, I actually do quite like that model. I think it's a little bit more probably safe. I think we'll end up wasting less money. I think we'll probably get players for smaller amounts of money as well, opposed to going and spending, I don't know, say we want to go and get Florian Wirtz from Bayern Leverkusen. That's 100 million right there. Say you want to go and get Antonio Silva from Benfica. That's 100 million right there, 2 players, 2 positions, international players, 200 million pounds gone. And it might not work. They might come in and it'll be the classic thing where, it might take them a couple of seasons to adapt. And then by that point, everyone's saying they're a flop and people are saying, get them out. And maybe we do need to have that slight cultural change where we focus more on almost tried and tested players who've been in the Premier League. Maybe they're not the most glamorous of names. Maybe they're not the ones that you're going to be desperately wanting to get printed on the back of your shirt. Like, if you were a Newcastle fan, would you be running to buy a Lewis Hall shirt? Like, probably not. Would you be getting an Anthony Gordon shirt? Probably not. Harvey Barnes? Probably not. You see where I'm going with this. Whereas Sandro Tonali, if I was a Newcastle fan, I'd say, amazing, I'll get a Tonali shirt. Do you see where I'm going with this? And I think that Manchester United's message over the last kind of 15 to 20 years has always been bring in these big shirt sellers, you know, the Cavani's, the Ronaldos, the Di Marias, Mkhitaryan's, like these types of players who maybe aren't actually the best suited for the Premier League. But yeah, let me know what you guys think about that. How do you feel about focusing more on domestic players, or do you think that we should maybe be continuing our message of focusing on the more international ones? Al says English players are overpriced. We will overpay for mediocre talent. The thing is, though, mate, I get what you're saying, right? But I mean, I think Newcastle paid about 40 million for Anthony Gordon. Answer me this, right? What would you rather have? Anthony Gordon, and this is probably going to cause some controversy, but this is all part of having a conversation, isn't it? Would you rather have Anthony Gordon for 45 million euros or Anthony, Brazilian Anthony for 100 million? Let me know in the comment section. For me, based on what I've seen on the pitch, I'm going with Anthony Gordon. If you're telling me we can get a player who's played at Everton all of his career, has been playing in the Premier League since, I think, 2020. So for 3 years, you can get him for 45 million versus spending 100 million on Anthony. I would have gone for Anthony Gordon. I genuinely would have. I think that they've got the better deal there without a shadow of a doubt. If it was 100 million for each player, maybe there would be a bit of more of a consideration in my head. But I still probably would go with Anthony Gordon, to be completely honest. I think he is a better footballer than our Brazilian Anthony. But do you see where I'm going with this? So I think it's a little bit easy to say, oh no, we won't be able to do that. We're going to pay 150 million for the next Harry Maguire, or like, that's all just down to the recruitment and the people doing a proper job. It's not every single English player or British player or domestic player from England is going to cost you loads of money, because Newcastle, who we know have an open checkbook, have been going out and doing business and been doing it for good amounts of money. I mean, you look at Lewis Hall from Chelsea. I mean, he's another example. He's a really, really good up and coming centre back, right? They've got him for 35 million. That sounds like a lot of money, but when you think that Antonio Silva at Benfica, who I really, really like and would love to sign, is going to cost you 100 million. One of them's 18, one of them's 19. One of them's played in the Premier League or in, you know, domestic Premier Youth League and all the rest of it for all of their career, and the others played in the Portuguese league. I mean, what's the better deal there? I think that we glamorise these big money signings from outside of England. You know, everybody wants to sign Victor Osimhen for 150 million. I mean, why would you do that when you could potentially get Ivan Toney for 50, 60 million or 70 million, you know? And I think that's what Jim Ratcliffe's going with. And to be honest with you, until we give it a try, I'm not going to say it's a bad idea, you know? Yeah, I mean, most people in the chat are saying, yeah, I'd rather take Anthony Gordon. I mean, that just sums it up for me, and it kind of proves my point. And it proves Jim Ratcliffe's point as well, that, you know, like, yeah. Fred says shirt sellers that don't fit a system are a waste of money. Yeah, mate, I agree with you 100%. And I think that's what Jim Ratcliffe is noticing, that over the last kind of 10 plus years, we've wasted so much money on these players who, let's be honest, don't want to be here, are coming for the money. Yes, they'll do great things on the commercial side, but they don't really gel in the Premier League. It doesn't really work for them. And then in 2-3 seasons, they leave for a massive loss. Like, it's just the same cycle over and over and over again. Tiborg says we should look at players in the region of 15 to 30 million. It doesn't matter if they're English or not from England. They're overspending. The overspending must stop. Smaller clubs are using us to get rich. I would agree with that, mate. I don't think it's as black and white as, you know, only sign domestic players or don't sign domestic players. I just think that I can see how the Newcastle model has worked, where they are focusing on these players who are used to playing in the Premier League, who can hit the ground running, because I would say that it's 50-50 with a lot of these players that you sign from outside of England, you know? There's so many players who have been described as world class. They come to England and then they just don't succeed. It's just a completely different thing. Jihan says, who cares about shirt sales? It's about football, mate. I know that's what we think as football fans, but we're run by people who want to make money. The Glazers buy players to sell shirts. That's their philosophy. That is Manchester United's philosophy. Bring in people who will make the Glazers money. And I think that what is ultimately being said here is that Jim Ratcliffe's going to change that. We'll be seeing less glamorous names. There'll be people in the fan base saying, oh, why are we signing this guy from Everton? You know, this, I don't know, say like Brathwaite, is that his name? Jared Brathwaite? You know, you have two options. You can either get Antonio Silva, plays for Portugal national team, he's at Benfica, you know, it sounds a bit more glamorous, doesn't it? Or you can get an 18-year-old from Everton. Like, most people are going to be like, oh, I'm not sure about that. I would rather get Brathwaite, or I'd rather get Todibo, or I'd rather get, you know, I think it's something that we've fallen into this trap for a very, very long time. And I think that we need to maybe look more closely at the Newcastle model. I think, and that is what Jim Ratcliffe's going to do. Newcastle have got one of the best directors of football around. They have, like, that's a fact. Like, I would love to have Newcastle's director of football, Dan Ashworth. Obviously, he was at Brighton before. Very, very good director of football. Like, their whole team is exactly what we need to be looking at. I'm not saying we should go and take them from them, but we should be kind of moulding what they've achieved over there. But let me know what you guys think. All right, let's move on to this story about Toney. Before we get into that, I want you to let me know in the comment section, guys. Would you like to see Ivan Toney at Manchester United? Let me know in the comment section. The headline this morning is that Manchester United are currently monitoring Ivan Toney ahead of the next two transfer windows. United are also interested in signing Crystal Palace centre-back Mark Gea, but is unlikely to be available until the summer. Who would you like to get in that striker position? I mean, and how much would Ivan Toney cost? Obviously, we know that Chelsea are interested. We know that Arsenal are interested. How much money do you think Ivan Toney is going to cost Manchester United if we were to go and sign him? And would United go and do it? Obviously, there is this scandal, whatever you want to call it, around the gambling charges that, you know, that he's been found guilty of effectively and has been banned from football. Will Manchester United want to do a deal for a player who, obviously, he's served his ban, he's admitted to the things he's done, and he's moving on, but will Manchester United want to be associated with that? Let's have a look. Al says we can't afford Ivan Toney. Florian says Guirassy is a very good player. Yes, Guirassy is another option. Obviously, we spoke about yesterday from Stuttgart. DM says if we got a Gea from Crystal Palace, that would be great. Yeah, I agree with you, mate. Lots of people in the chat saying 80 to 100 million pounds for Ivan Toney. I mean, yeah, I mean, that's crazy, isn't it? It is. But you're probably right. Yeah, they're probably right. The thing is as well, I think that Ivan Toney, from what I'm hearing, wants to move to Arsenal. That's what the headline is this morning. So I wouldn't want to get into a position where we're outbidding somebody. You know, we're in a bidding war. You want to be able to have a bit of a clean run at it. Fred says Evan Ferguson above Toney all day if we have the money. I mean, Ferguson would be the dream signing, wouldn't he? But he's going to cost you 100 million as well. That's the problem, isn't it? Yeah, that's the problem. Obviously, there's people like this Guirassy guy at Stuttgart who's banging in the goals over in the Bundesliga. Somebody says we should bring back Greenwood. Yeah, I don't think it will happen, mate. But we'll have to wait and see. We'll have to wait and see. I just think that Jim Ratcliffe's not going to do that as his first point of call. You know, to bring back Mason Greenwood. I think that would be too controversial as his first kind of decision, if you like. But yeah, I'm going to wrap the video up here, guys. Thank you so much to everyone who's joined me on the show this morning. Do make sure to get your comments in after the video goes live. Have your say. What do you think about Sir Jim Ratcliffe's big plan of focusing on domestic players? What do you think about Ivan Toney? Would you like to see him as the new striker? I will be back about 6 o'clock this evening, so make sure you're here for that. Have a lovely day, everybody. Stay safe, stay warm. It's absolutely freezing in the UK today. It's like -2 degrees. So if you are in the UK, make sure you wrap up warm. And I'll speak to you all later. Have a lovely day. Hello.